Welcome to episode 1 of the Interconnection podcast. I've got Andrew Kern here, first guest. How you doing, Andrew?
Doing pretty well, Josh.
Yeah.
Excited.
Could you explain what you do for people who might not understand, like, this creative space and creating things like you do?
Yeah. So I own Flat Black Commercial Visuals. Admittedly, commercial visuals is a term I made up. I had messed with the idea of custom visuals and thought that sounded like something that Exhibit was like making your car look sick or something, or like some sort of like automotive. There's just something about it that didn't feel quite as polished, and commercial visuals felt good because it seemed to fit this void in this industry that I was kind of thrust into by happenstance, just operating as like a visuals maintenance man for a small restaurant development group prior to starting Flat Black. And what I saw was that there's this kind of no man's land between where people design things in what you'd call 2D on a computer screen, and then realizing those things in the real world where you can actually touch them, the fabrication element. And so what we want to do, or what we do, is we want to be the company that is able to design and execute fabrication, because having those controls under one roof, we believe, makes a much better product. So essentially, we're the company that makes all the stuff you can look at, touch, and feel.
That's a good way of putting it. From the moment that an idea is created, all the way until it's this, whatever it is built or painted or whatever, how do you even figure out like what materials you need to use? Like, I guess for someone like me, it's hard to understand, like, oh, I see this sign that you made, it looks great, it's backlit, but I just don't understand like how you just create that. Like the sign at Little Grand, the one that's kind of sticking out on the side by the mural, that's just like the little G, like I would have no idea where to even start with that.
So there's a lot that goes into like actually developing a brand, and so like what you're referencing is that sign, that's part of a larger package of visuals that we execute that holistically is supposed to make up a sensical looking final product. A lot of like what it takes to even get to the point of having a cohesive or a strong concept that you can execute in 3D, I don't truly know why my mind clocks certain things, tells me to whip out my cell phone, take a picture of it, pull this off Pinterest, put it in a folder, why this thing that might have seemed to work doesn't. But essentially, like, my mind kind of on autopilot, and that of my team, you figure out, you kind of hone in on like almost like this feeling, like you feel it, and you understand that there's certain finishes that do gel with whatever concept you conceive, and there's certain things that don't. And like, I don't mean to sound like hippie or like, it's a super spiritual process, but I will say that there's no, to answer your question, there's no one certain approach or one way that that's achieved. And it's very interesting to see, my brain operate in the context of different projects, because it definitely doesn't operate the same for everything across the board, which I'm really glad about, but is also very curious to me, because it seems like it would be much easier to just kind of have a default state that helps you get through creative. That would probably be a lot less exhausting, because to be honest, to get things to be dialed in the way that we want means that there's a lot of things that hit the cutting room floor. I mean, when you're talking about your question from a standpoint of like why we pick certain materials, there's obviously fashion and function. function probably should be the first thing you're thinking about, because you wouldn't want to make something that looks sexy but doesn't actually have a lifespan to endure time. But at the same time, there's a look to things, and there's a look that feels like it's the right look. And that's where I'm saying, like, I don't know, like, what's happening when something just, like, hits me over the head and just feels like that's the missing puzzle piece. But that feeling happens, and I am aware of it. I know what it feels like. So it's almost like I find myself consciously mining and throwing things at the cutting board to see or throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And I kind of wait for this, like, I don't even know what you'd call it, like an inner alarm, if you will, that is letting me know you found it, or this, let's keep this thing.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the feeling of when you feel like you get something right. And it's like, do you ever go back and assess, like, why it worked? Or are you just kind of going with the flow and saying, oh, this feels right, we're going to go down this direction? And kind of as you go, like, as the years go on in your company, like, do you notice trends, and are you able to kind of, like, harness that feeling and continue that with other projects?
I definitely don't find myself, like, revisiting old projects of how they would practically apply to new ones. Just kind of on a side note, you know, I've never wanted our company to seem like a company where you would be able to identify that it's a project we did because there's X, Y, and Z included in this project, and that's kind of a signature of all Flat Black jobs. I hope the signature for all Flat Black products, jobs, is that the quality is just through the roof, but not necessarily from any type of aesthetic standpoint or creative approach would somebody be able to glean, oh, I know that that's a Flat Black job, even without knowing, because that's how they all look. So again, I say I don't truly know what it is that works in a moment, but you know, you I don't know, kind of roll with it.
Yeah, well, you've clearly made it work time and time again. So, I mean, you're doing something right, and whatever that is, keep doing it. But what was your life like before you started Flat Black? Like, the year before you started Flat Black, what was your life like? Were you thinking of starting a company? Like, tell me about it.
So yeah, I guess to jump back to that small restaurant group, I worked with this small group. I worked closely with the one brother of the group that was more on the development side. I had a desk in their office that I was actually able to work on all of their projects, and then any projects I was able to pull through the door myself, obviously I could work on as well, but always had to incentivize or prioritize their work first. Ended up butting heads with that brother. Not to get too in the weeds with it, but his business practices were a bit immoral in some areas, and he and I had a fallout and over the phone, and I had essentially acquired myself 2 large projects, one with a developer downtown for a commercial residential building, and another that was a restaurant down in German Village that no longer exists. And I had been working with them for almost a decade, so it was a really scary time. But I knew through the economy within the 2 projects I had contracted very serendipitously at this time, as me and this dude were essentially breaking up, I knew I had a year's worth of work. So that was a really scary time, but that was like the start of Flat Black. Now, I do want to say, you go back before that, my life was nothing like it is now. But I don't know if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. I was kind of just asking, like, you know, bigger picture, what drives someone to start something like this, and like, because I feel like there's a lot of people who want to start their own thing, but they don't know where to start. Like, did Flat Black come to you, or did you come to Flat Black?
So I started Flat Black. I got my my EIN through the Secretary of the State or whatever prior to actually formally starting Flat Black. Like, I had that LLC. Flat Black's been a company for 8 years. I've probably had Flat Black as an LLC for 10. So yeah, starting it, like I said, I fell out with that dude. He said some pretty lame stuff to me, talking about how he was the only person who saw my value, that, you know, if I leave him, I'm going to regret it. And yeah, that's like rocket fuel for someone like me. Like, I mean, to the point where I was so driven to prove that man wrong about everything that he said, that it's almost like I woke up out of like this zombie state maybe 2 or 3 years later to realize that we had actually like accrued clientele and have an actual functional business that works in commercial, residential, retail, and restaurant. Another way to put that is like, I did not choose the game chose me, or I blindly allowed the game to choose me. To say that I was always like dreaming of working on, you know, apartment projects or restaurants is not true. I've always thought that stuff was cool, but like, yeah, it's really been by happenstance that we've kind of found a niche for ourselves in the worlds that we exist in.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I feel like a lot of people, they want to start a business, but they don't even know like what that's going to be, and they're just like, oh, I just want to start a business, I just want to do my own thing and not work a 9 to 5. But I feel like a lot of successful businesses started by just someone who like figured something out, and they were like, well, this is the path I'm going down and it's working, so I'm gonna see this through, and you know, eventually you might have a business. But yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck in that phase when they want to start something that they're just not sure. And
yeah, no, 100%. I just wanted to say that I would say you know, if I had not allowed there to be an equal amount of like my ambition and where I wanted to see things go, but also being open to where the universe is actually like leading you, I would have never reached where I'm at now. Because the Andrew then, if I had been more stubborn, would have said, I don't want to do this. You know, I want to do, you know, initially, like when I had just started doing art for myself or installations for people as one person, I wanted to do murals. I wanted to make art, you know, as you'd imagine, whatever I wanted. And I was hoping that, you know, there would be a population of people or a group of people that were interested enough in said art to be able to make a living off of that. I realized very quickly that you're probably going to have to do some work that may be creative, not necessarily as creative as you'd want to pay the bills, because to think that the fine arts model, which like essentially is you know, all the life experiences that I've had up until this juncture caused me to be so motivated to create this piece of art. And then Johnny Swingin' Dick person walking down the street has not only primary and secondary income, tertiary income for goofy shit like buying a sports car or art. That stuff is going to braid every single month on the clock, where I can actually like pay my rent and I can pay my utilities. That is something that very early I realized was probably not realistic for me. So I just want to say with all that it was a combination of definitely wanting to dodge having to have a 9 to 5, being grateful even in the times where I wasn't doing work quite as creative or inspiring as I might want, but still focusing on the gratitude of what I was getting to do, being patient through those times, and then allowing life to like actually reveal to me a lot more than I could have ever anticipated. And like having, 8 dudes I work with now, the projects, the clients that we have, all that would never have been possible if I had been really hyper-focused on only what Andrew wanted to do at that time. So it's a long-winded way, as I'd be doing, of just saying that definitely, I think people need to have an idea of where they want to go, but know that you're probably going to end up at a destination that's a little bit different than what you had initially sought for.
Do you think everything happens for a reason? Because you mentioned the universe, kind of coming together for you, and everything's kind of just fell in place.
It does, man. Like time and time again, to go in my past before Flat Black, I really made a go at trying to be a real Grievel dog shithead, and I probably could have successfully continued down that path, but it did seem.
So what do you mean by that when you say it, that term?
Like selling drugs, like hanging out with pretty terrible people in a lot of ways. Some of them were great, but I'm just saying that as much as, there's a lot that goes into the mentality that I had at that time. I was a real broken dude in a lot of ways. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, as much as I tried to, at a time in my life, align myself with people that I thought were like, cool male figures, or like somebody that aspirationally, for whatever reason, I want to be like this guy, the universe did not let that happen. I could have fought the universe, and the universe would have continued to kick my ass, but at some point, I gave up. I realized that the way that I was living was so wrong. And that's where I kind of got into just, doing art. The art thing was basically like never gone my whole life. Like everyone knew, even in that world, even when I was, running around with some pretty colorful characters, they all knew I was like really creative and talented. So it was like people, even the people that you want your like goofy street accolade from or whatever, is really like, man, Drew, you should probably be an artist. And you're like, no, I want you to see me as this bad person. So yeah, like that's what I mean. And I guess like that's probably a more profound version of how that happened to get me to move into a creative field. And then once I was in that creative field, it was, the stream or the inertia of life just kept pushing me into these new places, meeting new people, new experiences.
Describe what it was like, kind of with that transition and learning that you were creative. When's the first time that you kind of realized that you had a gift, or you had a creative mind that eventually would lead you to this?
So it's interesting. So I've always gravitated towards art. I've always had a talent for it, a knack for it. I was put in classes ahead of mine from a very early age. When it came to art, art teachers a lot of times would hold me to higher esteem than other kids, like have me working on projects that were basically like extracurricular, like outside of what they were teaching the other kids, in a way to, help fast track me to some sort of destination that they must have seen. What's funny to me looking back is I distinctly remember at my elementary school, art teachers switching from when you're in earlier elementary to like middle school. And I had this new art teacher and intentionally tried my first year of middle school to do like subpar art so that I wouldn't have to like be doing these extra credit projects or whatever. Totally not thinking about this one talks to that one, and even though you have a new art teacher, it's not like the art teacher doesn't know the other art teacher or got briefed on you or whatever. So the jig was up pretty quick when they saw this and knew that I was phoning it in. But even that, I mean, actually, like thinking about that, that's even an example right there. You know what I mean? Like the universe didn't let me, coast. Like the teacher told me, I've already talked to, her name was Miss Hickey, my elementary art teacher, but I already talked to Miss Hickey. I know you're sick with it. I mean, she didn't say it like that, but like, I know you're way nicer than this.
Yeah. The universe does some crazy things. And I think it also has a lot to do with your surroundings and who you hang out with, but I feel like the universe is always stronger. It always is going to have a stronger pull, because deep down, I feel like a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but there's people out there who, like you said, act like all hard, and they'll act like they have this tough shell, but I really do believe that humans have like an innate drive in themselves, and that pushes them to be better no matter what. Like a lot of people I've talked to that maybe aren't on the best path, they all have moments in time where they're like, oh, I gotta get my shit together. And it's really interesting seeing that with people that that you'd think are pretty set in their ways, but everybody struggles with that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think that the universe, or, some people could call it God, that you can't really mess with it. And I think that there's probably cases where people do try to be, gods in their own universe and really, manage or try to navigate as best they can the way that they want their life to go. And I think that like life just laughs back at them sometimes.
Yeah. You believe in God?
I believe that there has to be some kind of design to this. I don't like the notion that everything is just random, because I think that I have an innate good. I have the part of me that is a byproduct of both my parents and my surroundings, but I also believe that there's a me-ness that is totally separate from anything but something that is special all unto me. And everybody has that. And I guess the closest thing I could get to the notion of like God is the fact that I can get so wrapped up in my own bullshit and the stuff that I'm stressed about, or the cool things that I'm doing, or the people that I love, or the dreams that I have, and then to imagine that everybody walking down the street also has that much complexity to them, my brain cannot even fathom. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the notion that must be true, and there must be something that allows that to be true, that, I guess, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think humans have a really hard time grasping like things like that, like how big the universe is and how complex the world is. Like, there's 8 billion people on this planet. You'll never even you'll never get to meet every single one of them. You're never gonna see every inch of the earth, and I think what you said about you can't wrap your mind around it. For me, it's like, for humans to even exist on Earth, it's such a, like, mathematically, it's almost impossible, because, you know, our skin, our matter that makes up us, you know, trees, plants, it all came from materials from some star that exploded, or at least we think. Who actually knows? But to think that we're just made up of all this stuff, and that somehow a single-celled organism just happened to exist, you know, like, how did that even happen?
And then add to that how crazy arrogant is it of us to think that we're the only game in town? Whole universe, all kinds of planets, and we're the only ones. I personally, I don't believe that could be possible.
Do you think that the UFOs that people claim they see are real, or do you think that's us?
Well, I was just at an Ohio State game where I literally saw the most Hunger Games ass shit I've ever seen in my life, where they had like 200 drones like in unison making shapes of shit. And that obviously right there probably means that it's pretty possible to ruin a farmer out in rural Ohio's life if you wanted to. However, I do have a conspiracy, if you will, about humans and what we are. And so basically my thought about humans is that we are essentially alien in our own right. I think that when you look at us in terms of other creatures on this planet, we are very ill adapted to our surroundings, meaning, like, you know, you think of a sea turtle, to use as a goofy example. I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right, but they, like, you know, the mother buries the eggs out in the beach and then she just pieces out. And these turtles hatch, leave, go in the ocean, and have, you know, some innate knowledge of, like, how they're supposed to survive. You leave a human baby without its parent, it's screwed. Now, that alone is not a reason why I think we're so advanced. But the other thing that's interesting to me is we need these clothes. We need these crazy creature comforts where we literally have to, like, change the properties of things on Earth to accommodate the needs that we have, which leads me to believe that there is probably part of us that is otherworldly, because the way in which we live in this world comfortably is essentially only made possible by us, like, really stressing it out to actually hurting it.
But I feel like we need these things because we created them, and, like, we were born in an era where it's like we just have everything.
100%.
And, I feel like I kind of agree with you with, if you just left a baby out in the woods, like, I feel like they would, I mean, I'd like to think they could figure it out.
A baby?
But not before they get mauled by a bear or eaten by something.
So, baby, I don't know. Like, that'd be crazy to be a baby that was left in the woods and figured it out.
Yeah.
Get that dude on your podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if, I think I'd be doing most of the talking on that one, but.
Well, and here's the other thing, is that the way in which we live on this planet is just so different than any other creature, that there's a feeling that I have that, like, that in and of itself is otherworldly. It's otherworldly applied to this world. I think that potentially is why a lot of people have this, like, longing for home, or, like, feeling as though we have not that we're not home, but that, I guess it's like, that's why I think people reach for other conclusions, because this world sometimes doesn't feel natural. The things that we do also, in terms of like how we make money, how we coexist, in a lot of senses don't seem natural to me. I mean, I play the game, but like minutes to hours to days of your life, like let's say 8 to 10 on average, that you work a job that's just a means to an end to have money to be able to like survive, and that's most of your waking life, does seem counterproductive to like human connection, experiences that humans can have with each other. It's almost a way of keeping us kind of together but separate. I know from like even going to churches when I was younger, to like men's meetings that I go to now, to some of the, different spiritual stuff that I'll check in with every now and again, that there's something really beautiful to be said about human connection, that there is like a power or a magic, if you will, of like what happens when you get people to like take down their firewalls and really be vulnerable with one another. But I think like a lot of the things in this world that we've made have kind of gotten in the way of that a little bit. So I don't know. I think it's almost like I said, like we're not actual aliens. I think that we are creatures of this earth with alien DNA in us, and feel me or don't, but that's why we are both of this world and out, to me. Like, I don't know. That's kind of how I thought.
That's an interesting perspective. I don't think I've ever heard quite that exact theory, but that's definitely an interesting one.
Like when I see my homegirl, like my friend Rachel's like son with his shirt off, and he's got like the frickin' like 3D headset, and he's like interfacing with some kid in another country on like VR. A video game or whatever. Yeah, VR. Like that like snapshot in my head is the most unnatural looking shit I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the juxtaposition of that and a beaver making a dam. Like, there's something about that's like, what?
Yeah, dude. I disagree with you though on the alien DNA part, because I think humans are actually more like animals than we even realize. Like other than the ability to have language and be able to communicate with each other intelligently and to be able to do all these things, like you take that away and we're animals. Like you look at like a chimpanzee or a gorilla, and you see like their mannerisms and their facial expressions. Like you could tell they're intelligent.
That's what I think we're from. Well, let me say a little more on it. So that is what I think. I think we're animal. So another thing to think is like, or another thing I think about is like, if you were an interstellar being, somebody who is able to travel at the speed of light and arrive at this planet, what is your definition of God? Because somebody who can travel at the speed of light could also deliver weapons at the speed of light, meaning that there is absolutely no way that you could ever war or defend yourself against this, because they are literally all powerful. Or at least they're so much more powerful than you that's where I wonder, frame of reference wise, what is someone's definition of a god? And I think about paintings or things that you see in like old works of art that like actually depict some like extraterrestrial activity. That I guess my two conclusions are either one, aliens did visit here, they probably are here in ways, or we are actually potentially able to time travel in the future, and the aliens that we are seeing are the progressed, humankind that we have now, just many, many years in the future, looking back, almost as the same as somebody would go on a vacation.
Yeah. I take on the same stance as Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he knows a hell of a lot more than I do. But I think there's definitely a possibility that there's life, and I think it would be stupid to say that it's definitely not, because, I mean, it happened on Earth. It's clearly possible. But it's hard to wrap my head around, like, because the universe is huge, and to say that one star you're looking at, that's probably unfathomably far away. Like, that what formed there is even close to anything that we have on Earth. Because things evolve differently. Like, Earth just so happens to be the perfect planet for us to live in. It's perfectly temperate. It started out as a big flaming ball of lava, and it cooled down over billions of years.
Yeah.
And through, for life to form on this planet, it had to be hot. There had to be hot, and there had to be water. And that is how, theoretically, the first, cell was born. But how that happened, I don't know. But to say that life doesn't exist, I think I don't think it's a definite thing.
Sure.
But I don't think there's people visiting us. And I don't think, like, people who say the pyramids were built by aliens, it's just really hard for me to believe that.
Yeah. Well, don't believe it. I mean, I don't know definitively either. I think it's just it's some fun, heady stuff to talk about. But I definitely you dropped the name of, like, the Michael Jordan of space, so I'm not going to go against Neil deGrasse Tyson or pretend I know more than that cat.
Yeah, he is. I don't know if you have listened to him talk in any at length at all, but have you?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, he's a super cool dude.
He makes really difficult to understand things easy to understand for, like, the average person, and I appreciate that a lot. But it's fascinating. I could talk about it all day, because it's hard for the human mind to wrap their head around why we're here. I mean, we've been asking this question for millennia, and we will continue to ask the question, and we'll never really know. Like, the way we're advancing as a society with technology and everything, I think we think it's super advanced, but I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what's possible.
For sure.
Yeah, and it scares me, because to us, like, everything that's going on with AI and everything, it seems scary to some people, and to some people they're like, oh, it's nothing, or like, it's not going to affect anything. People who use AI every day, like, I hate those people. I, for one, I use AI a lot. Not for everything, but I feel like for someone like me who has a lot of things going on, like the podcasts and my business, I feel like it cuts down a lot of time, and that's really what I use it for.
Definitely. I mean, like James Franco said in Pineapple Express, Pandora only goes out of the box. She doesn't go back in, bro. So, AI is definitely out there.
What is AI from your perspective? How does AI shift your world, and how has, like, I guess more social media in general, how has that changed your line of work?
Well, man, that's there's so many
maybe
different
not
ways to
you
approach
particularly, but like what trends have you seen in the industry? I know when we were talking earlier, you were mentioning that like no one cares about how long you carved this piece of wood for.
Yeah.
So it's more about output, I guess you'd
it's
say.
100% about output. So it cuts down on what I was talking about before of like the way in which my brain slots certain things in and says it gets a pass and it makes sense in terms of the design and then kicks others out. You know, you can make essentially just like a very basic Revit model, black and white, run it through an AI program.
Revit is the software.
It's like a building software, but I'm saying that you can run it through AI with different prompts in terms of aesthetic or material types, and it will spit something back to you that follows said directive. I think that it really cuts down on the time that I would be maybe walking through an antique store, going to a library, going to the what's it called, the Ohio Historical Society or something like that, trying to do R&D, and instead kind of expedites that process and then just allows for, you know, you to kind of pick and choose or curate what is foundationally set up for you through the AI. The place that I see AI is getting dangerous is that Pinterest, for instance, which is like the pond that pretty much everybody who works in interior designs is fishing from, has been polluted, if you will, with imagery that is completely AI. And one of the reasons that frustrates me is that what's already been an issue with people in 2D or people that just design on a computer screen, not necessarily understanding.
Keep talking. The cat's trying to get my muffin. Let me just.
It's kind of bizarre just to talk to yourself on a camera. But that, like, essentially, there's always been the issue of like what people call the floating shelves, meaning like you can design something in 2D that has, you know, a rock suspended from air because it's, you know, you're God in your own computer. There's no gravity, there's no anything that you have to adhere to in terms of you know, the laws of the world or engineering. But where the rubber meets the road, when you actually want to make things, it's very frustrating at times for the people that do make things when somebody hasn't taken into account how that would actually exist in the real world. Well, now we have AI images that are basically doubling down on what frustrates people that really make things, because you have, you know, people taking inspiration from something that inherently is total fantasy, and they're essentially building their design on top of that, which I feel like makes an end product even further removed from what's real. The other thing is that AI is not a living, breathing human, and so it's not something that can essentially be held responsible for anything that it does. You're not able to communicate with it in a way that I communicate with my team, where like we are actually kicking the ball back and forth and I know I'm talking to another human. As I understand it in my limited knowledge, I'm essentially talking to something that is a compilation of a bunch of different information that is able to filter in real time through many different resources the rightest answer through its coding to answer my question, which probably 99 times out of 100 is pretty dead on. But at the end of the day, it's still not something that's real. And so I guess this is kind of a roundabout way of saying I don't think the jury's really out on like how bad this is going to affect things. But I can damn sure tell you, I know when somebody sends me an AI email that sounds redundant as hell, and instead of using that as like the springboard for you to actually William Shakespeare something that sounds coherent, you just lazily picked the first thing so you could send an answer back, and now I know that you're lazy.
Yeah, I feel like I've noticed people who use AI for everything And in the beginning, when I started using it for a lot of things, I noticed that when I was in situations that like normally would be a pretty easy decision, it's like, oh, I don't know. And it's almost like I was reaching for something that like to give me an answer, and I kind of realized that was bad. And I feel like you got to use it in moderation. And there's a lot of ways you can get creative with it, because I feel like a lot of people look at it as like, oh, I could just like write essays with it, and that's pretty much all I could do.
Well, so does it have original thought? Supposedly no. Which that's the thing in my world. Like essays and stuff like that, like I get how that can definitely cut down time. It can help you with like the structure of what you're trying to make. It can give you, the language that you're trying to use. But when it becomes something, when the task at hand is to create something original, I don't think that there's that universe or that God in AI. It's essentially a really, really large, I guess you could use the term echo chamber, or it is actually to use like the book report example, like AI is like, well, it's plagiarism if I just rip from one source. Why don't I rip from like 5, combine them? And that essentially is a original idea. And that's more or less what I think a lot of people do, even as humans. But the thing that's, that, for lack of a better way to put it, that aha moment, that God moment that you have with an idea, you're not going to have that with AI, because the only thing that AI is going to do is going to take a lot of really, really great ideas that fit the prompt that you're asking, and it's going to give you something that might not actually exist in the real world exactly as it is, but it's going to be compiled of a lot of things that probably already exist. And so I do worry that the less and less that people are building their foundation on something that takes the sweat and the time and the effort to get through that like research and development phase organically, that you are going to see things become a lot more similar looking. Trends, I think, are going to wash over us like a typhoon, and we're probably going to be swept in them to the point where like a lot of things just look the same, because people are going to be using the same AI, same as they were using Pinterest. So not to be like doom and gloom, but it's a pretty slippery slope. And like you mentioned, the practical ways in which it cuts down on time make it so alluring. Mm-hmm. So I don't see a lot of disincentive other than crotchety ass people that are like, back in my day. And like any statement that starts with that, especially in the cell phone times that we're in, I don't have time for it, old guy. You know what I mean? Like I get that like things were harder in your day, but like I'm not going to write a letter versus sending an email. So that is to say, like, I don't ever want to fight technology. I don't ever want to say that something is inherently wrong when I definitely see it having, positives. There's a lot of people that talk a lot of trash and are able to connect with people internationally that also have really terrible views, on the internet, to spew hate and do all kinds of things. But is that a reason why somebody isn't able to talk to their grandma, out in another country that they normally wouldn't be able to converse with, or me be able to actually solicit help from an artist that I perceive as like a hero of mine that I would normally never be able to meet if it weren't for this technology? So like it cuts both ways. But I guess the last thing I'll say that freaks me out about AI is that it has the potential to become sentient, or actually to like not necessarily think for itself the way that we think for ourselves, but think independently from us. And that's where I get very scared, truly, because when we become so reliant on this technology that may or may not be our friend, that puts us in a really bad spot.
Yeah. So there was a paper published. I don't know if you saw this, but it's called like AI 2027 or something along those lines. Essentially, it's a scientific paper written by these very credible like AI researchers, and they laid out exactly what they think will happen based on the current trajectory of AI until 2027. And essentially, because I don't know if you know, but the government acquired OpenAI like a month ago or something.
Well, that's got to be great.
Yeah, so that tells us a lot
wrong?
about, and that scares me because not. But anyways, to kind of finish what I was saying, in this paper, they explain how they're creating. Essentially, there is an AI war happening right now between China and the U.S. I don't want to say war, but there's definitely an AI race, if you will, and it's whatever the company is over there, like DeepSeek, I think it is, but they're creating agents who train the next version of themselves. So essentially, they create this agent that no one else has access to. Like ChatGPT is like our version. They obviously they have a more powerful version themselves that they're not going to release. But these AIs, they train the next version of themselves, and then the next version of themselves, they train the next one, and eventually it's going to become so smart that it's not that they'll become sentient necessarily, but they will be so focused on being right, and I don't want to say deceiving humans, but like OpenAI, they have a literal team of people that make sure that the AI is aligned. And what that means is that the AI isn't starting to do things that are worrisome. So like there's a whole team dedicated to that, and
we're cooked. Yeah. We're cooked. Yeah. I'm just gonna say, like, that's the stuff that they like talk about in the locker room at my gym. There's this dude who works with AI all the time, and yeah, it doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't sound good, but I think there is a world where, because I don't think there's anything we can do to be prepared for it, and I think we shouldn't expect to be prepared for it.
So here's some weird shit. What if this is just like the whole life that we live in right now is like, what if that's a version of AI? Like, I've thought about that. Like, this is a simulation. Because, like, when you look at the technology that's, like, happening now in terms of, like, you know, even the way that, I mean, think about, like, back in Forrest Gump, they got John F. Kennedy to, like, thank him for taking a bullet in his butt. And obviously that didn't really happen. But that was, like, when I was, like, a kid or whenever that movie came out. I mean, we were light years ahead of that. And that was, like, crazy to a lot of people. I do genuinely worry about where we get to a point where, like, the world that's generated by AI or in VR is so real and so appealing that people stop participating in this one. And then it almost makes me think, well, is there a possibility that this world in and of itself is a simulation? I mean, obviously there's simulation theory and stuff, but it does beg the question of, like, what is real? Like, what makes reality real? Because, yeah, I mean, I think if you have, I don't know, just certain things really dialed in, it would be pretty hard for the average person to tell or distinguish one world from the other. And then I get really worried about, well, like, am I going to be that old head? He's like one of the last people living in this world while a bunch of people are, like, living in another one where they're, like, 7 feet tall and they can play ball or, you know, whatever goofy shit they want to do. Because that would obviously be a much more glamorous existence for somebody who doesn't like their life in this one. And that's something that I get worried about, because back to my, original thing about human connection and the ways in which we as creatures and our life experiences somehow serendipitously are able to help somebody else. You know what I mean? Like the way I'm able to give a friend advice when they need it. Like that type of like connection is so much more profound than like some unreliable source that's like a supposed therapist that broad brushes, problems you might be having that you get that you get information from on TikTok. There's a difference between talking to a therapist versus looking at a bunch of things that are curated for your search on Instagram. There's a difference between hanging out with a friend or playing a video game with a friend. And that's where it's like, I don't want to see that ever go away. I don't really care that like somebody's able to circle an area, put in a prompt, and then they can generate some aesthetically pleasing design directive in seconds, as much as it would bother me that I can't actually have a meaningful conversation with somebody and see that beauty in the universe where that person may have suffered or had some sort of hardship that helps me. I don't want to just be helped by my phone. I don't want to just be helped by a computer program.
Yeah, I think there's a link. Between how much you interact with people and depression and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. In today's world, every year that goes by, there's more and more people who are on antidepressants and who just aren't happy in general. And then again, I go to a restaurant and I see a group of people that are like even a year or two younger than me, and they're all on their phones and they're not talking to each other. And that's their way of socializing or whatever.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Yeah, 22-year-olds are really good about not being on their phones.
Yeah, well, I grew up with it. I was born in 2002. So, ever since I had an opinion on anything, there was phones, I got a phone in 7th grade, I think. So pretty much my whole conscious life, I've had a phone. And I think that's part of the problem. But then again, it's impossible to, as a parent, it's impossible to dodge, because there's these kids who have phones and iPads when they're like super young, like way younger than that. And we wonder why like depression is on the rise, and we just wonder why. And it's like, it's very obvious to me, because to me, there's a direct correlation with how much I talk to people and my mood and just my general happiness. I just know after this conversation, I'm going to be energized all day.
I'll try to make sure that happens for you. No Debbie Downers.
It's just like, it already is happening, and I feel like more people need to realize that. And obviously that's kind of why I started this podcast, because I noticed in my own life that people give me energy. And I know a lot of people are introverts. I feel like a lot of people who claim they're introverts aren't introverts, by the way. But that's another story.
Yeah, I'd say another thing that's interesting about the technology, because I would see, to kind of apply it back to like the name of your podcast and people being interconnected or connected in any way. Technology in its own right, in a lot of senses, I feel like does help to separate us. Like you mentioned, somebody on their phone staring at it is not going to be as engaging conversationally as somebody who's off of it, or as likely to, be able to have any type of, essentially any type of ability to receive what's going on around them, because they're so just hyper focused on what's happening in their phone. I do think like what I was talking about in terms of like the traditional ways that I do research and development when approaching a project that warrants me having to go out into the world. You know, I have to go to an antique store, I have to go to a library, I have to go to different places to get those real original ideas. I mean, of course I use Pinterest and things like that as well, but in order to get that like that jewel, that, you know, really rare thing, it's usually probably from like a vacation or something that I see on like a roadside gas station. Who knows where these ideas come from, and I don't know why my brain picks up on them, but those are the things that I think are really special that you completely lose when all you use is technology. So I mean that I don't know where I'm really going with that, other than that's the thing that probably scares me the most, is like the magic that comes from human connection could, in theory, go away. And I don't think that communicating with people on your cell phone is the same as communicating with somebody up close.
Absolutely not.
And that there's a lot of ways in which people are developing, you know, everything ranging from personality disorders to just, you know, mild to severe depression, that has everything to do with the way that we're conditioned in the times that we live in now, where, you know, I don't think that these problems existed in other times when cell phones weren't as prevalent. The one thing I'll say as devil's advocate to myself, however, is like the more that I go down memory lane or like history, even history that I wasn't even alive for, it's kind of like you just exchange one for the other. You know, like there's probably people that say, you know, the 1950s was a really good time for America. And it probably was, in the sense that whoever's saying it means it. But there's also a lot of things that were really bad in those times, such as like segregation, which still exists to this day. I'm just saying it was probably, you know, even worse back then. Certainly people were much more close-minded. So I'm just saying, like,
dudes were beating their wives.
100%, and yeah, and they're 100%. There's all kinds of stuff like that was happening and being swept under the rug. So I don't really know what to say in terms of like that regard. But then actually to talk about something a little bit more political, which I mean, it's true. Like there's a genocide happening in Gaza right now. It's without question. There are people being murdered, exterminated, to be essentially removed from a land that another people want to occupy. And it is more broadcasted or shown freely than any other conflict that I can think of to date. Do I see a bunch of people up in arms about it? Yes, I see people upset, but not as many people as I necessarily saw even for George Floyd at the time when that was a big deal in 2020. And to bring up George Floyd as an example, it's very curious to me that was something that so many people rallied behind, but also lost its gusto over time. But that didn't stop the killing of black men at the hands of police officers. However, our collective interest seemed to wane. Like, I do not feel like there's that same gusto that there was in 2020 when I was downtown protesting that there is now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean police violence has gotten any better.
Yeah, I think it's also a bad thing that we're seeing things that we're not supposed to see. You know, like before you could take videos of anything or pictures, like you would hear about, like maybe in the Vietnam War era, like you might hear about things that happen, but like you're not seeing it happen. And I feel like there's something to be said about that.
That it's good not to see it?
I think there's a weird... for me, it's kind of a gray area, because I don't think I should be going on Instagram and watching someone get killed. I don't think anyone needs to see that.
I agree with that.
It's bad. Like, it doesn't do anything good for you. And that is one of the things about social media that, like, me growing up, you know, I saw things I shouldn't have saw, you know, as a young kid. And I'm in a sense, I'm desensitized from it all, because it's like, well, when I was young, I saw all this stuff, and now when I see things, it's like, wow, that's crazy. But I can only imagine if I was not exposed to that stuff and I see it now, I'd probably be like, really, you know.
You'd be a real more palatable person.
I mean, yeah.
Are you a terror?
A what?
Are you a terror?
Terror?
Are you all beat up inside because of the videos you've seen?
I wouldn't say that. I think everything you see in your life shapes you, but I don't know. I think you just have to recognize that and kind of acknowledge it and move on. But, you know, I can't change the past, you know. But I do think a lot of young people who are, if you're listening to this, you could probably agree that we are desensitized in some way.
Absolutely. I have two things since I wanted to say that came to mind. One, I definitely do agree that we are all desensitized, and I say that jokingly about being a terror. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think, you know, to use like what recently happened to that Charlie Kirk cat, like, obviously people saw that man murdered on Instagram or various social media outlets. I think the experience of people that were actually there when it happened, that had to experience it firsthand, their takeaway from that moment is much different than the takeaway from people such as ourselves that saw it through our phone screen. Mm-hmm. Not to say that, like, I don't understand a man's life was taken. I'm not even going to get into, because there's no point in wasting my time of, like, what type of dude that was or anything like that. That was a person who got smoked by somebody, and I don't agree with just wanton killing in any form, no matter who the person is. And that somebody being there and fearing for their life and being caught up in the shuffle of a bunch of people not knowing what was happening and just wanting to get home safe, they're going to have a much different much different experience than the person who looks at that video and is like, oh shit, which I think is like basically what most people take away in this day and age. They get this little shock, kind of the same as you do watching a horror film, but I don't think that it necessarily impacts them in a meaningful way. And so I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say, though, is that back to the human connection thing, is that people, in the way that they can interface with other people that have similar views to them, have created these echo chambers where they feel like they're interfacing with the common, you know, people, but in actuality they're just interfacing with a very specific group that shares the same sentiments they do. And so it's kind of a roundabout way of saying a lot of people that spew hate, or have not even hate, just strong opinions in general, it's much harder to have a strong opinion that you say out into the public and allow other people to call you out on or give their opinions on than it is to go on a chat or into some chat room that you already know 99% of the people there are probably going to dig what you say. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, like, I see the technology as like completely restructuring the way in which people interface with one another, so there isn't really a balance. And you kind of just create more and more of a divide where these people go over here and these go over here. Yeah.
And I think, first of all, politics brings out the worst in people. I've always said that. I'll continue to say that. I think a lot of people online, you know, that connection, when you're talking with someone online, that connection is lost. So you're more likely, like, that's why there's so much hate online, is because they don't, like, if you're face to face with somebody, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to say, like, I don't spew hate online, but like people who do, I guarantee if you saw them face to face, they're probably not going to say that same thing, and you'll probably realize that they have their own problems that they need to deal with, and they're projecting, you know, and they find reprieve in doing it online, in some roundabout way, and it's not good, and it's definitely a problem, and I feel like as humans we are more. It's not about how we are different; it's about how we are alike, and I feel like we are way more alike than we are different. Because it's like, it's back to like being like humans being like animals. Like we are literally an animal, in a literal sense. Like we are our species. Like that's just who we are, and we. You know, and you look throughout time, throughout ancient history, like we've always fought each other. Like even back to ancient Egypt. I forget. I don't want to say the Sumerians, but there was towards the fall of ancient Egypt, there was another group that had either moved in from somewhere around the Middle East. But long story short, we've always fought, and I think technology just exacerbates. Exacerbates that, and I think it's excelled in a rate. You know, in the past 20 years, we've advanced technologically more than we have in the entire like history of the earth.
So that was something that I actually forgot that I wanted to say is, yeah, I agree. I think technology is moving so fast that you literally have generational gaps that are happening at a way faster rate, to the point where you're not even really talking about generations difference. You're just talking about, you know, 10 years or less, and people essentially having completely different experiences growing up because the technology is becoming so advanced so fast that this group of people born 10 years apart from this one, well, the ones that were, you know, 10 years their senior, they don't even really know how to interface with that other group because their brain chemistry is almost, or their brain wiring is almost different. You know, I'm somebody who had a cell phone. I didn't even have my first cell phone, and I'm talking a brick, like a I think it was like a Kyocera or something, with the sparkly blue.
Is that kind of like is it similar to a BlackBerry or like a Nokia?
I'm not gonna waste my time explaining to like you about, but just trust, there was a time where cell phones didn't flip or do anything. There was just like a thick rectangle. See, I can already see this is just, I don't want to take you down to this dark time that I used to live. Like when dudes used to like sell drugs on chirp phones, which is the craziest shit ever. Like, beep, beep, talk to me, bro. And then you'd hear the other person's conversation, and they're like walking through city center, like talking like that, literally selling drugs like out loud. But anyhow, point is that like I had my first phone when I was like, I don't know, I want to say like 13, 14 or something. And I mean, I'm talking digi-screen. Like there's nothing I could look up other than my contacts. I could text them and I could call them. And it wasn't until, and I more or less like stayed in that world. They got more advanced. You had flip phones that had like, you know, better pixels, so you could take pictures and see what you were taking a picture of, and finally got to the point where it was resolute enough. You could take a picture of something and you could email it to yourself, and you could print it out. But like, I had a girlfriend, and I want to say I was probably like 25 or 26, that like forced me into getting a smartphone. And I remember telling chick, like, I don't want one. It's gonna fuck me up. Like I literally said that. Yeah. Like it's gonna fuck my whole world up. I know it. And she got me one, And I was salty at first. I was upset because I was like, man, I don't want to. I used to be like kind of the equivalent of the like, oh, you guys all like Ohio State, check out my Michigan jersey. I don't even like Michigan. I just want to do it to be different. You know what I mean? So I think that there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, all these people are jumping on these Apple phones. I'm going to be the person who stays off. Well, lo and behold, she got me one for my birthday or Christmas or something, teamed up with my parents to do it. And, you know, I think I was salty all of like one day until I started using it. And then it was like I never looked back.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in some like, oh my God, it changed my life in all these great ways. Now, granted, like having emails, being able to do correspondence with people like in instant time, like that's immensely helpful for running a business. But that was like not what initially took me. It was things like Instagram, the fact that my Facebook was like right there and I could check it at any time. I didn't have to wait until I was like sitting in front of my computer. That was probably the stuff I was initially most swept up with. And like, man, like, yeah, that stuff is only getting worse. So I don't know. I guess the reason I reference that experience is that I can only imagine that things are going to get more desirable, not less desirable.
Yeah, well, that's a byproduct of capitalism is how can we make this thing release the most dopamine in people's brains?
While depleting it, man. Dopamine, that's going to be the new gold, dude. I'm saying, like, that's what I feel like everybody wants to stimulate, but at the same time, you know, we don't have any patience for letting it build. Like, everything is pretty instant gratification in this day and age.
Yeah, like our phones, the food we eat, like they literally, these companies, they literally engineer these foods to release the most amount of dopamine possible. I mean, they literally do tests on it, and they're like, how could, like, and these ingredients lists are so long, and it's like we shouldn't be putting this in our bodies, but like at the end of the day, it's like, how can we make our product as addictive as possible?
That's correct. I mean, maybe addictive. I was gonna say dopamine. Like, I love North Star, but anytime I go to North Star, I look at the price of my meal, and I do not feel dopamine release.
Yeah.
But I will say, I
do love North Star.
I still go. Yeah, shout out North Star. I go to North Star like all the time, even as expensive as it is. So yeah, there must be something addicting about it.
A pimento cheeseburger.
Pimento cheeseburger, dude, the shooting star.
Huh?
A little shooting star. Got it's like carrot, apple, some other shit. I don't even know.
What's that?
It's really healthy. It's a drink.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
okay.
an orange drink.
Their cider from there is best I ever had. It's unbelievable. But
yeah.
But anyways, yeah. It's crazy, and I feel like there's a lot of people who aren't equipped to fight that because or maybe they just don't understand it, and they're like, oh, I'm so depressed. But
bro, that's like, a good point. So that's a really good point. So like, if you grow up, and I mean, I don't think this is far off. I think this is right now. This is probably the generation that I'll probably be expecting to take care of me when I'm older, and I'll actually be like falling out on some sort of life support machine, and they can't hear that I'm dying because they have earbuds in. But
AirPods, I hate.
But no, for real, if your frame of reference of dealing with a problem is to essentially either talk to your phone, use your phone to be your aid, or talk to someone else who more or less rarely talks to other people and uses their phone for a lot of their information as well. If you think about your original, the thing you were talking about people through OpenAI that are making sure that the AI is aligned. If we're all essentially utilizing this same device, and this device ever wants to play us, that's it, man. And I think it already is. I just think that we're willingly complicit, you know what I mean, in our own essentially rewiring to be less human, less compassionate. But if that thing, or whatever you want to call it, that technology was actively trying to, you know, mess us up, we're all doomed. And I think we already are, because what I'm getting at is like the reason, you know, and actually to kind of alley-oop this back to like my career, is that everything that I've learned is because of the fact that probably some old crotchety person who's been doing a trade for a long ass time had enough patience to sit down with me and saw maybe a little sliver of themselves or something in me that they felt the need or the desire to want to impart this knowledge. It's not because I sat on my phone and saw, yo, that dude has a cool look to him, so I'm gonna curate all my shit to look like that dude. I don't give any F's about what it took for that person to arrive there. I just need to know X, Y, and Z so I can execute on that. And the conglomeration of those acts, or the ways that I talk or whatever, essentially parroting or mimicking this other person, if I do that convincingly enough that this other third party group sees me as just as sincere as the person that I'm essentially mirroring, well then I've made it. And I think that that's a really distressing thing to me, because I do run into a lot of people that want to be creative directors, or they want to be interior designers, or fill in the blank what the F ever, but they don't have any idea of like what it actually takes to get there. Or you want to run a company and you want people to actually follow you or listen to you, but you have no idea how to lead. But you want these things. But you don't really want these. You know, you don't want to actually do the work. I don't think we live in a day and age where people put in as much work on figuring out what their genuine article of them is. Mm-hmm. They spend a lot more work looking at other people, being worried what other people think about them, and essentially trying to curate a self that is an image that's borrowed from someone else. And the worst part of that to me is that the person you might be borrowing the image from, and in most cases I would say this is true, is not somebody that's close enough to touch or to really actually interface with. So you're drawing a lot of your own personal conclusions about what somebody, you know, might be, and at the end of the day, that person could actually be trash. Or you might not even know that what goes into looking like the person that you're trying to emulate is killing them. Mm-hmm. But because of the fact that you're only looking at what they can curate from the best versions of what they show the public, you don't see all the in between. And that's where real human connection, that, you know, that's like that's the whole shit. Is like, I can't sit here with you and just be super cool all the time. I'm gonna trip over my words. I'm gonna have things that pop in my head that like distract me. But that's me. That's me authentically.
I think you hit on something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that is, we are in a world that promotes being perfect, or the idea of being perfect all the time, and people, and you know, that's why I want to have these conversations, is because I want people to realize that, like, we are not robots. We make mistakes all the time. Like, what you see on Instagram isn't actually what it is, and or at least it's the best parts of what it is, but you don't see, you know, all the downs, all the struggles, and we just don't. Social media creates a space where it's ideal. Like everybody is is doing things, and you feel behind because you're looking at people doing these things on Instagram, and you're not, and you get sad, and you're like, oh, I'm 22 and I've even struggled with this. It's like, even though I've done a lot of things as a 22-year-old, like I'm looking at this 18-year-old who is a millionaire, and he's making all this money, and he's all these cars, and it's like that's definitely a bad thing about social media.
100%. And
it's not ideal, and humans aren't perfect, and we need to stop acting like we are.
Well, that's very true. I guess that just brought to mind too, is that I've had, through work, I've gotten to meet a pretty diverse, to put it mildly, cross section of people. I can think of this one day that I went to 2 different meetings at 2 different offices, where I sat next to people I would say in assets are probably, well, certainly multimillionaires, if not maybe a B, And then I go to the house of my dude who's the son of, a dude from a fairly notable former rock band in Columbus, the Gods. Like, he's Eric Moore's son, and hanging out with them in the same day. And what had struck me that day, and especially what strikes me now, is that no matter what or where you're at in life, I really do think it all shakes out the same. Like, the people that have these exotic, amazing lives also have equally exotic, unbelievable problems. That is not to say, the individuals I'm thinking of in these meetings are people that I've gotten to see their personal lives. I have gotten to see the personal lives of some successful people in my own experience. And it's just like, the more you find out about them, it doesn't mean like our problems are the same, but it's like, there was a teacher that said to me this one time, if everybody could put their problems on a table, everybody in the classroom could put their problems on a table, and you can leave this room taking whatever problem you want, that nobody would take anybody's problem but their own, because we're so afraid of the unknown stuff. And I really genuinely believe that like, when I have sat there at times thinking to myself, man, I wish I could just be fill in the blank, because their life is so effing great, and like, man, I wish I had X, Y, and Z. They have it. How could their life ever be hard? Yeah, in that moment, I might be thinking that, and that's just because I'm kind of throwing a pity party, right? I probably need to talk to a friend. But when I get some distance on it and some perspective on it, I know it's not true. I know that person, even without knowing, has issues that I can't even imagine. Somebody that is, I don't know why, but it comes to mind, is like, I think of the fashion designer Virgil Abloh, who died of cancer. And he died of cancer in a time where he was at the apex of his career, and he died of cancer in a way where nobody except the people that were close to him knew that he had cancer. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's very interesting to me. And then that brings to mind, before I really went down like a bad path in life, there's this place that's probably located where like Whole Foods is now at Easton, that was called like the Northeast Career Center. And this gentleman, Rob Brucken, who saw a lot of promise in me, got me lined up to get the presidential scholarship to Columbus College of Art and Design. I think the teacher's name was Arthur Denny, and like, he had the teacher even meet with me. And that's a wild place for like a 17-year-old to be thinking about, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Where do you want to go to college? But I basically turned my back on all that, and I said, I want to paint graffiti, and I want to do hood shit with my friends. Mm-hmm. Well, that man had cancer. I hope that like my life in some way is a living testament to like, or I hope in some way that the energy that made up that man is able to see in some way that like it wasn't for nothing. But you know, he comes to mind because it's like I didn't know that about him. You know what I mean? And like I have a temper. Like there's stuff that upsets me, but like I really do have to like humble myself that like, and I guess this goes back to that like God thing, is like just as much as we have these like unique, interesting lives, we also have these like unique problems, and everybody's got them. And so like when somebody wants to act like, you know, some sort of, you know, less than how I would want to be treated, my knee-jerk reaction might be, I'm going to make you regret that. You know, I'm going to show you how, you know, witty I can be, and I'm going to just tear you down. And that's all ego. That's the part of me that doesn't want to hurt. But when I can be more centered, I can realize that that is a way in which we're all connected, not necessarily by the same problems, but the fact that we have them.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It also definitely makes you realize that I feel like the older I get, the more empathy I have for other people, because the more you see...
Empathy is the word, yes.
And you know... I feel like the more you struggle with, the more empathy you have, because the more you realize, like, okay, other people have problems too, and we're all humans. We're in this together. Like, we're all trying to do the same thing. And you hit on a good point about, you know, seeing the personal life of, you know, potentially a billionaire or like a millionaire or whoever. Wherever you're at in life, at this very moment, this is your baseline. And humans' innate drive is to get more of whatever it is, money, power, fame, whatever it is. And people struggle to kind of realize this. When they talk about rich people, they're like, eat the rich, like all this stuff. And like a lot of people don't understand why a person like Jeff Bezos even keeps going. It's like, well, there's stories of these people who start these companies like a tech startup or something, and after 2 years they sell it for like $400 million. And there's this one guy in particular that's coming to mind. I'm not sure his name, but he started a tech company and he sold it for some ungodly amount of money. And he made a tweet that was like, I'm lost in life. I just sold the company that I started. I have more money than I could ever use in my entire lifetime, but I'm lost. I feel without purpose. Mm-hmm. And that is what a lot of people don't understand, is like, no matter where you're at, you're gonna push for more, because that is what humans do. And it's just like, you talk to people who are really successful and you ask them like, you know, what was life like before you were successful? I guess I'm having a hard time framing that question, but yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on. I feel like a lot of people don't understand that about humans.
Well, so if you take it like in that sense, it's like, if the only way that you're viewing a lot of the humans that you look up to is the curated images and posts that they pick that are only of their highlights and not of them as, you know, the full picture, that means that our human connection is inherently flawed, because of the fact that people are not able to understand each other, you know, in a real way, like how we would have in the past. And it doesn't mean in the past that I would have been able to be a privy to as much of what's going on with somebody else's life as I am now. But what would have been more commonplace is that no matter what type of way I was feeling, I would probably have to either I believe I would have a higher likelihood that I would have to sit with that uncomfortable feeling. And if that feeling got too uncomfortable, I would need to go talk to somebody else about it. And now we live in a day and age where, like, I might be just messing around on my phone, and then all of a sudden I see some stuff that's bothering me, and what do? Well, I continue to just go down that rabbit hole more and more and more. And I do think that in terms of dopamines and wiring and ways in which that hurts us, that is more so what we're doing. Where, like, you know, if I'm looking for something both good and bad, I'm gonna find it. So if I want to basically be on some sort of like pity party track where I'm feeling less than, everybody's more successful, better than Andrew, I'm gonna find that on my phone. And it's probably gonna be pretty hard for me once I go down that rabbit hole or that slippery slope to like stop myself and be like, Andrew, what are you doing right now? And that's where I think that if you are able to talk to more people, you know, if people do interface with one another more organically, that you're going to be able to find out more than you would ever be able to glean just looking at like what I call like highlight reels, which is essentially what we show the world. You know, like I got to do this cool thing. I got to, be in this cool place, whatever. And, you know, it doesn't show anything about, like, the argument you got into or how your mom called you for something, you know, and that's all real. It doesn't mean that, like, people should be let into every aspect of people's lives. It's more so that I don't think we're getting an honest assessment of, like, what life is. And so inherently makes a lot of people feel like they must be out of whack. When in actuality, they're just the same as everyone else, from the billionaire to the bum. You know what I mean? We all have different problems, but we all have a common thread. But it's almost like the way in which we curate our lives and show it to the world is to conceal some of that thread. You know, I only want to show the positives. I only want to show the strands that sparkle and shine. I don't want to show the parts of me that are dark.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself when you're posting something, am I posting this thing because I want other people to see that I am doing this thing?
Always. I am so terribly self-indulgent with mine. I'm kidding, but I mean, not kidding.
Yeah. Well, I always have to check myself because, you know, I travel a lot. I go to a lot of cool places, and, you know, obviously I'm a photographer, and that's, you know, that's what I feel like I was meant to do. Like videography as well. And, you know, I constantly ask myself, like, am I posting this because I want other people to be impressed? Or am I posting this because I genuinely feel deeply about this thing? Or maybe not deeply, but, you know, this is just something that I like and that I'm going to post because that is who I am, and that is what I want to show regardless of what people think of it. And I think I definitely used to be that way, in a way. But I feel like now it's more like I'm excited about it. Mm-hmm. So maybe other people will be excited about it. And it's not, and at the end of the day, it's not about other people. Not to be selfish, but I feel like we all need to be a little more selfish sometimes. But yeah.
I guess that, like, the first thought that occurs to me is I don't think it's right or wrong either way, because, like, it's all for other people. In my opinion, I mean, you would take the flick and you'd put it in a box and shove it under your bed if you didn't actually care that anybody saw it.
Right.
I think that it's like our weird way with this technology of like screaming out for that interconnection. I think that no matter what somebody posts, you know, whether it's that post that's an obvious cry for help because you're sad, or it's something that you're actually posting sincerely because you're like happy about it and you want to share it, not necessarily wanting accolades, but like, you know, something that you're proud of. But I do think everything that is put out into the ether of social media inherently has some desire on some level for someone else to validate it. Not necessarily validate you, but to acknowledge it, maybe is a better word than validate. It wants acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I would be lying if I said this video I post, I don't want it to do well, I just want to post a video. Like, I'd be lying if I said that. But at the end of the day, I created this thing. This is the view I have on the world and how I saw it. And I am sharing this with you. Yeah. And not inherently, it's not for them, but I want it to do well.
Yeah. So it is a little bit. I'm just saying that it's that's one of those things I think we gas ourselves up about, where it's like, yeah, if you're constantly seeking validation, like if your post doesn't get a certain amount of likes and that's the metric that you use for whether or not it's worthy of being out in the internet, that's going to be a real depressing way to live. I mean, I think a lot of us live like that, where we do want to be validated by others. However, I don't think that I really have any opinion on, like, where, you know, does a tree make a sound in a forest if no one's there to hear it? More now than ever, because, like, even if this tree falling in the woods where no one's there to hear it is the most spectacular sound in the world, if nobody's there to hear it, no one cares. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about that one day about, like, you know, how much time you put into your craft versus, like, what is the end result. I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I mean, like, you know, the person on the other end, I guess is what I mean, that's receiving said photo or video or whatever you're putting out there, you know, no matter how aligned you are or centered you are in terms of, like, the reasoning you have behind the post, you also have just as little control of how it's received on the other end. You know, meaning that unless we're alluding to how I feel spiritually when I click post somehow is communicated along with the post, which I do not believe, you could just as easily be somebody who's posting for all the right reasons, and the hater on the other end is like, man, look what an attention whore he is. And there's no way to control that. So that's where I mean, like, I don't think at the end of the day why somebody posts something matters any more or less other than to them personally. But I don't think it matters in terms of the audience, because once it's out there, we have no control of it. But to alley you back to what I was saying about, like, some of the, you know, creative processes and kind of to have this gel with what we were talking about with, like, AI and stuff, is that we're in a day and age now where, like, the reason behind something almost matters less than ever. We are people I see now is more obsessed with just what is the end product, get me there, and you know, take it for what it's worth. I mean, it's I'd say it's bad, but I don't know how it changes, because I think that our attention span is a lot shorter. So the thing that where I'm going with this is that the byproduct I've seen of this condition is that we almost have, like, an incentive to post things to keep a captive audience that we don't even really know. But we know they're out there. We know the possibility, the potential for likes is out there. So there's a reason to stay current. There's a reason to stay relevant. And that in and of itself can be a reason for people to really get spun out on what their level of, you know, credibility or accreditation or how cool they are in a literal world that doesn't exist in a physical sense.
Yeah. You touched on something about, I think there's a lot of really people who could have been really talented. Well, I guess not could have been. I guess if you have talent, it's innate. But there's a lot of talented people who never realized it because they posted on Instagram every week for a year and nothing happened. And they're like, well, must not be for me. Because like you were saying, the attention spans are shorter, the turnover rate is a lot quicker. So, you know, a byproduct of that is like, oh, this isn't working, I gotta do something else.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you really, people aren't giving themselves a chance to actually develop a skill or develop something that they have a vision of, but they can't quite replicate it. They can't quite get the ideas in their head out into the world like they want to yet. And I've seen that a lot with a lot of talented people, and it's sad, you know, because I definitely could have seen myself going down that path because, you know, when I started photography, like, obviously it sucked. Like, obviously. But I think the only thing that kept me doing it was because I actually truly liked doing it. And I never, when I picked up a camera, I was never like, oh, I can make money off this. Like, this is going to be great. Like, I feel like if that's what you think, you're way more likely to quit early because you're not going to see that right away. Like, things take time to build. And, you know, the fact that I liked it so much just led me down this path. And, you know, after 5 years of having a camera, it's like, that's when you see overnight successes, quote unquote. Yeah, it might happen in like a year, but that's backed by many years before then of not going anywhere. And it's sad when you see people that don't quite get there and they don't see it through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the persistence in any type of creative field is something that definitely has existed even prior to the internet, because like if you think of, you know, I just have this example pop in my head of like an aspiring actor. You know, every actor all across the board, even the people that have won Oscars, have had that person who you know, told them, so, you know, sorry, we passed. And I'm sure even have experiences like you can hear of like, not only, you know, do we pass hiring you for this role, I don't even think you're cut out for this. You know what I mean? Like kind of like the guy I was talking about that I used to work for. So that you know, I think no matter what, you arrive at this point where you're at a crossroads where you either take what somebody or people have said at face value and say, yeah, they must be right, or you decide, hey, maybe I'm just not good enough yet, but I'm damn sure not going to quit. I guess with that preface is that it's all the more reason to not let something like the internet or like social media get you all bummed out, you know, because that's not even real as actually being rejected to your face.
Yeah.
But I will say, if things trend the way that they are and people are interfacing with other people less and less, and they're interfacing more and more with the system we're describing, then yeah, there are people that are literally going to quit because of lack of likes. There are people that are not going to have the drive to want to continue in some field that they, you know, should, because of the fact that, you know, they're bummed out about their lack of engagement. But then to go back to the universe, and like I was saying about kind of some of my checkered past, is that that's the one thing I guess I hold out hope for, is that no matter the fuckery of, you know, the digital age we live in, there is still that spiritual connection with the world around us and the way that guides us. Even despite how we might fight and rail against it, that it's so powerful it becomes impossible. So that is to say that if there was somebody who had a really hard time on social media that was so gifted in this certain area and they got discouraged because of haters, that the universe in time would still navigate that person back to where they're at.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like we're all kind of, people that make up a fabric, if you will. We're woven together in ways.
Society only works because people are different.
Yeah.
If everyone did the same thing, it would collapse.
That's true. But then we also have these commonalities, which, and that was something I kind of wanted to say about the echo chamber thing with people that are like into like bigotry or hate or any type of like super specific viewpoint, is that it becomes harder and harder in my experience to stand on business, so to speak, if you have the group or peoples that you're speaking about there to respond to you. It's very easy for me, not that I am, but let's say, let me say this the right way so I don't get canceled. It would be much easier for me to be some fucking backcountry white racist if I was just hanging out with a bunch of other Caucasian Mountain Dew mouth Appalachian Hill people. Scratch that. Nothing wrong with Appalachia. Apologies. I don't want to.
All right, you're canceled.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
Pretty much. And it would take a 22-year-old to make that official because I'm too old to cancel anyone. But I was going to say that, it's much easier to exist in that way. And obviously to reference someplace like Appalachia, yeah, those people really are kind of off in their own world. I would liken chat rooms and groups that people are a part of as like their own kind of like way in which they're removed from most other society, because I can think in my experience people that come to mind that like I really at times couldn't stand, like whether it's in work relationships or like outside of work, somebody that I just felt like me and them did not get along. And I can't tell you how many times, if I stuck it out long enough, where like me and this person actually like had a pretty like emotionally vulnerable conversation where we took off our cool and actually like looked eye to eye at each other and aired our grievances, that we didn't like walk away from that friends, and actually finding out that a lot of the stuff that was like having us butt heads was because we're so similar. So I don't know. I think about that stuff a lot in terms of about the day and age that we're in, where like I do hope that more and more people are talking to people and connecting with real people rather than just kind of sitting in their safe zones.
Yeah. It all goes back to like having these deep conversations, and I feel like there's not enough of it happening, and I feel like it goes back to what I said about we are more alike than we are different, and it's hard to see that now.
I feel like I don't know enough about space for like the first 10 minutes of this shit. You were putting me through my paces.
I'm a nerd when it comes to space and like ancient history and all that stuff, but like we don't really know. Like we have theories that, like, I don't know how much you know about the universe, but it's proposed that it's the Big Bang happened 14 billion years ago, and that the universe has been expanding ever since, and every day it gets faster. So think of it as like a cone, and from the Big Bang, from that point, if that's what happened, that it expanded out from there, mm-hmm. and it keeps going. And in the grand scheme of things, like the Earth, we are very early. Like 14 billion years is an unfathomable amount of time. Like, mm-hmm. humans can't even wrap their head around how long that is.
I know about this.
Yeah.
You know how small we are?
Pretty
Do you
small.
know how small we are on the span of time from your Big Bang? Like our recorded history is, I wish we had a visual aid, but when somebody showed me that, I think it's so arrogant for us to think that we're like the most technologically advanced or best that we've ever been, or that we're the only game in town, when you know that there is all this vast amount of time in which whole civilizations could have like apex crested, fallen, risen from the ashes.
Exactly.
There's absolutely, to me, no way that in all of that time, in all of that action that must have happened, that we are the best game and the best product that it's ever been. I'm not saying that it's not all relative. I'm not trying to say that I think that we're trash and there was something much better. But I do think that there was much, much different things that have happened than what we're aware of. And that it is very arrogant the way in which we have a tendency to think we must be the best that it's ever been because everything's linear and it only gets better.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think
gotta pee really bad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Honestly,
are you gonna sit
you
here?
just you want to cut it off here, or you want to keep going?
This is a really spacey one, man. This is a crazy one,
dude. Here's the thing. I always take it. If you've known me, I always take it to space.
All right.
I always take it to space. Always take it to like ancient Egypt or some shit.
Okay. I wish I would have known.
Yeah.
I need to go to the bathroom. Keep going, back.
Yeah. We'll take a break. If you had to guess how long we've been talking.
How long? 2 hours?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It's crazy how time slips away when you're having a good conversation.
Yeah.
Life's crazy.
100%. It ain't stopping.
No. It's not going to stop, even if you tried.
Yeah. I mean, is this it? That's about it?
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
Dude, I mean, I could keep talking forever. I mean, but I'd say 2 hours is probably...
I'd say it's pretty good.
Probably the upper limit.
Yeah.
But,
all right.
Yeah, I appreciate you being on the first episode. I think it was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
And
100% always is.
Yeah, and you're always open to, or you're always free to come on whenever.
All right.
So I think we got a lot more to talk about still.
100%. Yeah.
All right, brother.
Cool. Good shit.
Yeah.